everyone. It's really good to be with you again. I wanted to talk to you today about two parts of our ecosystems in Kansas that we rely on. They're really important resources for us: water and wind. Now, what you can see behind me is the earth, right? And you'll notice that a lot of it is blue. And that's because a lot of our Earth's surface is covered in water. 3/4 of the Earth's surface is water. A lot of that water is salt water. And while that's really important for the organisms and the ecosystems in our oceans, we need fresh water to survive. And there's much less fresh water than there is salt water on Earth. What we're going to do now is talk about an experiment that I did right after our soils lesson that we did together. And then we're going to be talking about water in Kansas. What I did after our soils lesson is I planted the same number of radish seeds in small pots that had sand in them, so sandy soil or complex soil. And if you remember from the last time we worked together, complex soil is lots of different sized rock pieces. There's clay, there's silt and sand, and then there's organic matter. So it's a complex soil. Which soil do you think the plants are growing best in? Well, it looks to me like the plants in the complex soil are bigger and they're a little greener. So if you were a plant or were a gardener and wanting to plant plants, which soil do you think would be the best to grow your plants in, to grow your garden? What do we use water for? Drinking. You really need to drink a lot. And again, this is fresh water. Washing our hands. Washing our hands right now is really, really important to keep us all safe. Taking baths. That looks like a lot of fun. Watering our gardens. Lots of people are growing gardens this time of year, are planting and watering their gardens. Cooking food. Cooking and cleaning up after preparing food. We use a lot of water for that. Doing our laundry. When we're washing our clothes, we use a lot of water. Using the toilet. The toilet uses a lot of water with each flush. And then playing in water. Playing in water is really important to have. It's fun to have. It's important to have fun in water, and so you can do that at a beach, at a pool, or with your hose or a sprinkler. So where does our water come from? The water that we use every day comes from rain. It comes from snow. It comes from streams and lakes or reservoirs, rivers, and groundwater. So groundwater is water that fills the spaces between soil particles, and it's deep underground, and it flows from land to streams and rivers. So groundwater is another important source of our water. This is Kansas. It's a diagram of Kansas, and all these blue lines that you're seeing are the major rivers in Kansas. And all these larger blue splotches, these are lakes. Now, Kansas doesn't actually have a lot of natural lakes. So these lakes that you're seeing, these splotches, are actually what we call reservoirs. So reservoirs are lakes, but they're just not made naturally. They're made by us humans. So we dam up a part of the river so that we have a big pool of water. Now, why might we do that? Well, one reason is that sometimes rivers don't have enough water to supply a community. So if you have a reservoir near your town, then if there's not enough water in the river, you can use the reservoir. So it's a storage of water for communities so that they have a stable water source. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be exploring what happens when our reservoirs have erosion happening near them, where soil moves into them. And we're going to be exploring what happens with the chemicals that we might use on our lawns to make the grass grow greener or to kill weeds.
Hi, I'm Tara.
I'm Alice. And I'm Zella. And today we're going to be talking about what we use water for. What do you guys use water for?
I like to drink water.
I like to use water for so many different things, like taking baths and watering my vegetables that I'm growing in my garden and washing them off when I want to eat them.
Water is useful for a lot of things. Do you like to play in the water?
Yes, swimming is nice.
Yeah, swimming is great. In Kansas, we don't have a lot of surface water. We don't have a lot of ponds and lakes. So we build reservoirs for water.
What's a reservoir?
A reservoir is like a big pond, but it's man-made, and we build them to store water for communities to be able to use for all the things you talked about. Even if it's not raining or you don't have a river nearby, if you have a reservoir full of water, you have water to use at your house.
So this is a model of a reservoir. How is this like a reservoir?
Well, it's got a bottom and sides, and it's full of water. If it were really a reservoir, there would be land all around it too. But this is the model that we're using. And it's important to think about how there's land all around it, because one problem that can happen with reservoirs is erosion.
What is erosion?
Well, erosion is when sand and soil and even rocks can get moved across the landscape and moved into these reservoirs and into ponds as well, because of water moving across the surface of the land.
Like when it rains?
Yeah, when it rains, or also when people farm near streams, it makes the land kind of crumbly and wash into the streams, and the streams will carry the water into the reservoirs. And this can be a problem because, well, what do you think happens when a lot of rocks and sand and soil go into a reservoir?
The water gets dirty and we can't drink it anymore.
Well, let's try it and see what happens. I have some rocks and sand right here.
Should we dump it right in there?
Yeah. You guys want to help?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Start dumping.
This is the representation of the land
This is the.
that's eroding into the water.
That's right. So let's just see what happens as.
It looks like the water is getting muddy.
Oh yeah, it's getting kind of cloudy and dirty. What else is happening here?
Looks like the water is overflowing almost.
Yeah, the water is rising up towards the edge, isn't it?
Is it going to soak into the land?
Well, that's one of the problems. I'm just going to go for it here. If a reservoir gets really full, look, there's an island. If the reservoir gets really full of sand and soil and rocks that have eroded into it, there's not as much room for water, so there might not be enough water anymore for everybody and everything that they need. But you're right, it's also really dirty. Would you want to drink that water, Alice?
No, I would not. I want my water to be clean.
Let's see if we can clean it out.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, we can pull out some of those rocks, but Oh, it's really
It's
hard to
still
get
muddy.
it clean. It's muddy and can't really get the sand out. And that's another problem with erosion. It's really hard to fix it once it's happened. It's really hard to pull all that muck and soil back out of a reservoir. It costs a lot of money and it's really hard to do. So erosion can be a big problem for reservoirs.
Let's imagine that we have land near a stream and there's grass and flowers growing on the land. So one day, some people decide to move to the land. So we have our first house, Mrs. Sally's house, near the stream. And then we have Mr. Bob's house, a little further away from the stream. And then we have Mr. John's house, close to the stream. Mrs. Sally really likes to grow flowers around her house, so she decides to add some fertilizer around her house to make her flowers grow. And then Mr. John does not like weeds or anything growing around his house, so he adds some stuff to make his flowers not grow, some chemicals. Let's see what happens when it rains. A lot of water is coming down from the sky onto the land, all the flowers and trees. And it's washing, all the water's washing into the stream and the water's flowing. What do we see happening? I kind of see all the fertilizer and chemicals are starting to wash into the stream and mix together. I know that Mr. Bob up here is kind of scared of all these harsh chemicals being used by his neighbors, and he wants to have clean water for himself, so he's going to use his groundwater that is right next to his house. So he's gonna get the water from all the way deep in the ground, right next to his house, that he thinks isn't gonna be polluted. From the ground, and let's see what the water looks like. So Alice, why is Mr. Bob's water polluted? Well, I think it's because the water underneath the ground is also the same water as the stream, because it is moving back and forth and it's flowing through into the earth and back out into the stream. And so in the end, it's all just the same water that's been polluted.